I am fearfully and wonderfully made. My body, mind, and soul can't be replaced. Well, you can have your say, but I know who I am today. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Heaven rejoiced at my birth, made in God's image, a child of sacred worth. Through an age of doubts and fears, and of thoughts too deep for tears, I have come this far by grace, and I won't stop now. 'Cause I am fearfully and wonderfully made. My body, mind, and soul can't be replaced. You can have your say, but I know who I am today. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Heaven rejoiced at your birth, made in God's image, a child of sacred worth. Through an age of doubts and fears, and of thoughts too deep for tears, we have come this far by grace, and you won't stop now. 'Cause you are fearfully and wonderfully made. That should be saying you. Your body, mind, and soul can't be replaced. No two of us the same, and we can truly claim that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Heaven rejoiced at our births, made in God's image, filled with sacred worth. Through an age of doubts and fears, and of thoughts too deep for tears, we have come this far by grace, and we won't stop now. 'Cause we are fearfully and wonderfully made. Our body, minds, and souls can't be replaced. Oh, you can have your say, but we know who we are today. You think you know our parts, but you don't know our hearts. No two of us the same. We can truly claim that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. We are fearfully and wonderfully made.
Good evening, and welcome to Bias, Discrimination, and Hate Crimes, Knowing the New Jersey Laws That Protect You, brought to you by the Love and Faith Alliance, also known as LAFA, an LGBTQIA+ outreach of Christ Church in Summit, New Jersey. My name is Gregory Huff, and I am joined by my husband, John Takaz, as your hosts for this evening. We are both co-leaders of LAFA, which is a group of self-identified LGBTQIA+ individuals and allies gathered together to foster community, provide a safe space for discussion, and community outreach. With some exceptions, in-person meetings take place at Christ Church in Summit, New Jersey, every third Sunday of the month. However, you do not need to be a member of the church to attend, and the group is not primarily focused on religion. Last year, we offered several exciting community events, which included the screening of the film 1946, The Mistranslation That Shifted Culture, hosting guest speaker and voice of the New York City subway, Bernie Wagenblast, to give a talk about her life during Transgender Awareness Week. You will also receive a link to that discussion after tonight's webinar. And we enjoyed Friendsgiving, where we gathered at a local restaurant for fellowship prior to Thanksgiving. To add your name to our mailing list, or for more information about LAFA, please email us at lafa@christchurchsummit.org. John will now address a few housekeeping notes.
Thanks, Greg. Tonight's presentation is being recorded and will be posted on Christ Church Summit, New Jersey YouTube channel. About a week after the webinar, attendees will be sent links to the recording and to all the resources provided by our guest speakers. Please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A at any time during the webinar. Back to you, Greg.
Thanks, John. This webinar is presented as an outreach of Christ Church in Summit, New Jersey, which is part of the United Church of Christ network of Open and Affirming Churches. Christ Church is a diverse faith community inspiring its members to explore their own spirituality, grow in faith, and serve others. No matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. In-person Sunday service is at 10 a.m., and you can also attend online. Our senior minister, Reverend Dr. Charles Rush, focuses his ministry on the values that make for a spiritually rounded character. He was instrumental in leading Christ Church to intentionally reach out to LGBTQIA+ families in the 1990s, helping our church become a more multicultural community. He and his wife, Kate, have 4 beloved children and many cherished grandchildren. Reverend Chuck, would you please address our audience?
And so happy to have everybody here. We've got a great evening of speakers, one after another. And I just want to echo the value of listening to one another and sharing more deeply our questions, because the fears that we have are very real. And the solutions are most likely to come out of us being able to really know each other well enough that we can think imaginatively together. Thank you.
Thanks, Reverend Chuck. Before we begin our webinar, I would like us to observe a moment of silence for all the victims of discrimination, bias, and hate crimes who are no longer with us, and also for the LGBTQIA+ victims of the Holocaust, in recognition of the recent International Holocaust Remembrance Day. I would like to thank all of our guest speakers who generously gave of their time tonight so they could be here with all of us. There are many resources available in our communities, such as the Union County Office of LGBTQIA+ Affairs in Union County, and other organizations like that are here to serve our community. Our first speaker tonight is Detective Samara Abboud from the New Jersey Office of the Attorney General Bias Crimes Unit. Detective Sam, welcome to our panel.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good to see you all. Nice to meet you. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. Really, it is great. And with me tonight, I have my Lieutenant, Janessa Jones, who also happens to be the LGBTQIA ally. So thank you, LT, for coming, and thank you, everyone, for having us.
Yes. Now, there was one additional question. I've asked that person to unmute, so if they would like to speak the question, please.
Thank you so much, Greg, and thank you, Detective. I was just wondering, I noticed behind you, you had symbols of hate. Is WP a symbol?
Is WP a symbol? What do you mean by symbol?
Well, like you've got obviously the Nazi symbol and things like that, but a friend of mine moved to Warren County and he was surprised by what happened at football games during halftime. From about halftime on, the crowd would start chanting white power, white power. And a lot of people would have WP as symbols. If you ask them, they would say, oh, that's for world peace. But quite often it's known that that's not what it actually stands for.
Right. It could be either, actually, based on who's saying it or who's perceiving it. But yes, the hand gesture, with white power.
And I also would like to invite Lieutenant Janessa Jones if she would like to share something briefly before we continue the presentation.
Oh, hello. Thank you for having me, and Sam for asking me to join you. I just wanted to share that I am an ally for the LGBTQ plus community. I serve as a law enforcement liaison. So, if there's any needs in the community, or as Sam mentioned, we do a lot of outreach. We do a lot of things inside the communities, the walks, etc. We love doing outreach and meeting new people and spreading the word about bias. As Sam said, a lot of things aren't reported to us for many reasons. And hopefully, things like this, presentations like this, will give people a lot of awareness, and things can change.
Thank you very much. And we appreciate you coming and spending your time with us as well.
Yes, thank you. I'll be real quick. There's a few questions on the Q&A here I'd like to answer briefly. I know I don't want to take more time, but one of them is there an alternative to calling 911 knowing there still is bias against the LGBTQ, specifically the trans community? 911 is your best bet, because if there's an assault or anything, you have to call the police. We are an investigative agency. We don't respond like your local police do. So always call 911 when there's an issue, an assault or a bias crime of that nature. And then the officers will respond, they'll process, and then they'll send us the report. This is when we start our investigation. How is filing a report within 24 hours enforced? We try to enforce it, and when we find out that that wasn't the case, we have a prosecutor supervision unit that deals with the prosecutors, and the local chief will get a call from us. And then there's more complications, obviously, from that. But sometimes we have people call us, say, I filed a report with the police, and we haven't heard anything, or they haven't filed it. So we called it, and then it's case by case. Sometimes it's not a bias, sometimes it is, but they didn't put it in, so it's a case by case basis, pretty much, for that. Can you specifically ask for the liaison in our district, at least to have an ally? Sure. Get to know them, get to know who they are, and develop a relationship with your allies or liaisons in your district. Sure.
I just want to chime in too, as far as your response in regards to an alternative to calling 911. Yes, 911 is our the first person you want to call. When you call 911, though, you can ask if there is an LGBTQ plus liaison. The community is growing. So there may be an officer in your district. So you should ask them that if there is some concern.
Also, I would like to add real quick that there's other layers to your local police. There's the county prosecutor's office, they all have a bias crimes unit. And then there's the state AG's office. And then there's a federal government, the FBI. They have human rights, is it called? They also investigate bias and hate crimes. So there's 4 different layers. If you don't want to call your local police, go up a notch, and you can report that crime.
Thank you. I appreciate all of you taking the time to answer those questions. And if there are any other questions coming in, if you wouldn't mind writing out the answer to them, as well as you can take the time to answer it too. Next, we have Pamela McCauley, and she has been the victim witness coordinator for Essex County Prosecutor's Office for the past 34 years. She serves as a primary advocate on state, county, and local levels regarding issues directly impacting the lives of victims and witnesses of crime. She has been active and vocal in the New Jersey crime victims' rights movement since 1987, and was a founding member of the New Jersey Association of Crime Victim Advocates. the organization that was instrumental in rallying state residents to amend New Jersey's Constitution to provide constitutional protections of the rights and needs of crime victims. When asked about her life's work, Ms. McCauley stated that there is no more noble pursuit in life than to empower those without a voice, to encourage those with little hope, to bring solace to the weary, and to light a pathway for those in dogged pursuit of justice. Welcome to our panel, Pamela.
Thank you all for having me. Can you see my slide?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you very much for your kind information. I am very mindful of the time. I will provide you this slide presentation, but I'm going to hit the highlights, and I am available if you all have questions or anything like that. So I have been with the prosecutor's office for the last 35 years. And when I started on this journey, this career journey in victim assistance, we weren't having conversations about bias and discrimination. We were not talking about protected classes of people. In terms of law enforcement, it was very much about law and order. And holding offenders accountable, which is what, in terms of prosecution and law enforcement, we are supposed to do. But it begs the question, if the focus on a justice system is to bring about a degree of justice, then we must also include those who have been criminally victimized into the discussion and as viable participants in the criminal justice system. What you all need to know that in the state of New Jersey, we voted in 1992 to amend our state constitution to reflect the rights and needs of crime victims. So this is important because those who have been accused of crimes not only have state guarantees of protection, but also federal. This country has not yet voted to amend our federal constitution to reflect the rights and needs of crime victims. But New Jersey is one of, I believe now, 37 states who have elected to do so. This piece of legislation is important, and I think I'm going to start with the first line. A victim of crime shall be treated with fairness, compassion, and respect by the criminal justice system. And because that is the leading sentence in our state constitution, it is important to understand that historically, victims of crime have not had the standing in the criminal justice system as have those who are accused of crimes. Also, this constitutional amendment, the Victims' Rights Amendment, lays a legal foundation for what we have here in the state of New Jersey, which is known as the Crime Victims' Bill of Rights, to provide for the fair and equitable treatment of all victims. And that's important. So all victims, regardless of race, color, gender, identity, disability, religion, everyone is covered under this umbrella, this constitutional amendment, and have these rights embedded in their treatment in the criminal justice process. It's important that you all know that there are there's not only legislation, but there is also remedies that are provided through this legislation, as well as the Attorney General guidelines to ensure the rights of crime victims. So this is really very important. The Crime Victims Bill of Rights also makes the criminal justice system responsible for and responsive to the needs of crime victims. Okay, so I'm just going to, there are, I think there's 19 enumerated rights that are afforded to crime victims through the Crime Victims Bill of Rights, but are also constitutionally guaranteed through the Victims' Rights Amendment. So I'm just going to hit some of the highlights and then finish up and talk about the services that are available through the Office of Victim Witness Advocacy here in Essex County, as well as throughout the state. So victims have a right to be treated with dignity, compassion, and respect as their cases progress through the criminal justice system. The right to be informed about the criminal justice process, as well as case status, is also very important. Victims have a right to be free from intimidation. And this is not only in terms of legislation, but as a member of society, in our neighborhoods, we have a right to be able to move through our spaces with confidence that our safety and security is prioritized. There are three things that victims of crime, and in particular, the LGBTQ a plus community, it's very important that as a member of society, that our safety and security is safeguarded. That's number one. If a person has experienced and been a victim of a crime, that person has a right to be made whole. And that's not only through the criminal justice process, but as a member. Community is not just a noun, a person, place, or thing, or an idea. Community is a verb. And as such, that we have to practice, we have to embrace, we have to safeguard those who find themselves targets of hate and of bias. And the third thing that crime victims need is they have a right to be believed. They have a right to have their humanity and their personhood acknowledged. If someone is brave enough to come forward and to tell their story, there needs to be those of us who are not only systems-based, but who are working outside the system, maybe nonprofits, places of worship, that we have access or avenues of access so people can come in and tell their story and to be assisted in a way that acknowledges their dignity, their humanity, and their personhood. Victims also have a right, crime victim survivors also have a right to have the inconveniences associated with their participation in the justice system minimized. So if someone is coming in and they're frightened and intimidated, that when they're here within the prosecutor's office and the courts, they have matters in the courts, that we provide safe spaces, comfortable spaces, homey spaces for people to come and to wait while they're conducting business in our court system, whether or not they're going to court or they have been called to our office, the prosecutor's office, for because they're going to give a statement or testimony. So I'm just going to move through these slides quickly. You all, as I said, are going to receive a copy of this presentation, but I do want to talk about, I'm going to stop here, because victims, as I said, have a right to be informed. You know, if those who have been accused of crimes have these constitutional guarantees. You know, they have a right they too have a right to be informed. They have a right and protections about not to self-incriminate. They have a right to competent legal counsel. They have a right to remain silent. They have all of these rights, but if the offender or those who are committing these crimes have these rights, that we as a society also have set up and working to set up, continue to set up parallel systems of justice, whereas there is parity between those who have been accused and their rights, as well as those who have suffered at the hands of those who choose to commit crimes. So it's really important that people have standing in the criminal justice process, that they know what's going on in terms of what's going on with their cases, as well as final dispositions. Victims also, crime victim survivors also have a right not only to submit a written impact statement telling the court and system representatives, the prosecutors, the court, having an avenue of input, how the actions of the person who has committed these crimes against them, how they have been affected. They not only have a right to a written statement, but they also have a right at the time of sentencing to stand before the court and give an oral statement. Also, victims have a right to speak before a plea is being considered and is entered in their case. They have a right to speak to a representative, an assistant prosecutor, before a formal plea has been entered in the case, or there is some type of pretrial diversionary program, such as PTI, pretrial intervention, as well as our other diversionary programs. We have a recovery court, a mental health court, and we have a veterans court for those who are committing crimes who may have been a veteran, who are suffering from mental illness, or have a substance abuse issue. So all of this, the takeaway is that you have a right to not only to be noticed, but to be consulted before pleas are taken, and to be fully present throughout the criminal justice process. Okay. I'm going to move on. I'm moving on. Sorry. Okay. I am going to go back. So let me just very briefly speak about the services that are available through my office, the Victim Witness Advocacy Unit. And these services and resources are consistent throughout the state. Every county has a county prosecutor's office. And not only do we have enabling legislation to outline the responsibilities of those who work within the office, but we have guidelines set by the Attorney General to make sure that victims have access and are properly supported as their cases are moving through the criminal justice system. So my office was established in 1983, 1984. And our mission is threefold. One, we provide victim and witness assistance. Two, criminal justice orientation, as well as community outreach. A lot of people, when they have the misfortune of becoming a crime victim, and they report the crime, and that crime is investigated and prepared for prosecution in this office, a lot of people, their orientation is what they see on TV. And that's not what actually happens. So people come to the criminal justice system not knowing what's going on. They are traumatized. They have loss. Again, it's not just crime against property, but against the person. And bias incidents, bias crimes are extremely person directed. It is a personal assault against that person's humanity and that personhood. So what we want to do here in the prosecutor's office is first acknowledge that what happened was horrible. What happened was wrong, not only criminal, but it was just wrong, and that we are available to help victims of crime to navigate these systems. And not just in terms of prosecution, but also providing assistance when navigating other avenues of care, systems of care. So we provide, in terms of victim assistance, the criminal justice orientation, letting people know and understand what is expected, crisis intervention, which is huge because people need to understand the realities of what's going on at every stage of the prosecution. So we work very closely and act as a liaison between crime victims as well as the investigators who are preparing the case and doing the investigations, as well as the assistant prosecutors who are charged with prosecuting these cases. So we have information and referral. We assist people with replacement of property. We call it property return. A lot of advocating on behalf of the victim in terms of restitution that goes to making people whole, making sure that if there is a loss, that loss is addressed. We work very closely with the Victims of Crime Compensation Office. Office is located here, but that's an agency that will provide compensation for medical expenses, relocation expenses, legal expenses, all of those things that as a result of becoming involved, criminal justice involved as a victim survivor of a crime, to address these needs in a timely, culturally sensitive way and avenue. And then the last thing that we are responsible for is community outreach, because we are only as effective as our services are known to the public. So those of you who are here, you are like our ambassadors. We want you to take this information back with you and let people know that there are services that are available to those who have found themselves criminally victimized, and that these services are delivered without judgment, without discrimination, that in terms of our core values that we hold in very high esteem, inclusion, equity, and diversity. It is how we design policy, and that we deliver these services. And it's just, and my last point is, when people come forward and they tell us out their stories, and whether or not it's here in the prosecutor's office or in houses of worship, or beauty salons, nail salons, barbershops, that we owe those who are brave enough to come forward with our attention, to listen, to understand and not respond, to create safe spaces so that people can begin their journey back to, a state where they are able to make decisions about how they choose to live and how they want to move through their spaces. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And as I said, you'll have copies of this presentation. I am going to also provide you some other information on our bias unit, but I want to thank the organizers for including us in this very important, vital discussion. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. There is one person with their hand raised. Hold 1 second before we move on. I'm going to allow you to speak.
Yes, this was really a question for the victim rights person. I was concerned about whether or not the rights of the victim include mental health services for the trauma experienced by the victims.
The short answer to that question is absolutely. There are rights and services, resources available in our county, Essex County, Union County, throughout the state to assist those who have been traumatized due to crime.
And will that be available, in terms of your resources that you...
It's available now, but I am going to put my contact information in this Q&A so that we can talk more specifically.
Okay, good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking the time to address that, Pamela. I would like to welcome to the panel Carol Watchler, who now serves as a community outreach coordinator for the Bayard Rustin Center for Social Justice, but also has a long history of work for racial and social justice and gender equity. She was the caucus leader in securing policies for LGBTQIA+ rights and inclusion within both the National Educational Association and the NJEA, then chapter leader of GLSEN Central New Jersey, helping create many years of the annual statewide GSA forum gatherings that furthered education and support for LGBTQIA+ students. A retired high school teacher, Carol currently volunteers with the Bayard Rustin Center for Social Justice and serves on their board of directors. Carol fulfills her role by fostering connections with those who reach out to the Center for support and by providing programs and professional development on LGBTQIA+ education concerns and other social justice struggles. Welcome to the panel, Carol.
Thank you so much, Greg. And I just want to say thank you to the persons who preceded me in speaking. Your passion and compassion are so evident. And I want to thank Greg and John for bringing this all forward because we have so much to learn. Oh my goodness. And this is an important topic. As maybe you can hear from my introduction, I am mostly aware of and working with rights for students and for people in schools. So let me share my screen. I will move through it. And of course, I have to do all the preliminaries here. So, yes, I do work right now with the Bayard Rustin Center for Social Justice. And that will come more at the end because I'm going to talk a little bit about rights as I speak of them when I speak to educators and for others involved with schools. So first, and this has been alluded to previously, that we do have such a strong law in the state of New Jersey, the New Jersey Law Against Discrimination, which makes it unlawful to treat people differentially in employment, housing, public accommodations based on many different categories. This was amended in 1992, which some people are going to remember, to include sexual orientation, and again in 2006 went into effect in 2007 with gender identity or expression. And that gives us what we can build the other processes that have been spoken about so far. So again, unlawful to subject people to differential treatment, and the areas that I highlighted there, affectional or sexual orientation. That was an interesting way to state that when we worked on that for 8 years to get that into the law back in the 80s and the early 90s, and gender identity or expression. And as you can see, there are many other groups who have come to the state legislature and said, we need to include our group to be protected. And you see several of them listed there, including mental or physical disability, and so many others. So what I'm going to tell you is that I have a package of resources that I hope you will take some time to look over because they will expand on some of the things I'm saying here. And then as we move into the things that apply particularly in schools. So there's the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights to protect young people against bias of harassment, intimidation, and bullying in schools. HIB, harassment, intimidation, and bullying, based on actual, or as mentioned before, or perceived categories. And again, these are the ones that are mentioned in the law, and therefore they must be in each school district's policy. I'm going to just kind of keep building on some things that are in the law that are protective of persons in schools and indicate their rights. One is the law about ensuring that the Department of Education, via the Commissioner of Education, would ensure that school districts would have clear statements, policies protecting transgender students. And of course, this was at the time when some districts were beginning to create a policy, but all districts needed to have a policy specifically stating how transgender students should be protected and should be ensured of an equal and equitable education. So in a supportive, and this is the language, supportive and non-discriminatory environment for transgender students in New Jersey schools. And this goes all the way back to 2017. And then we got that didn't move where I wanted it to, the inclusive curriculum law a little bit later. And I should say that in 2018, the Commissioner of the Department of Education actually did promulgate all the things that were in the law and gave the transgender student guidance for schools. And you may have heard things about that because there are some school districts that are not really agreeing that this is a mandate. I consider it a mandate, and we believe that we will be able to include a law soon that will make sure that everyone knows that this is the law and must be followed. And when you look at my materials, you'll be able to see all the things that are included in the transgender student guidance, including the use of facilities, the use of the ability to have equal opportunity in all aspects of education and school programs, including athletics. So now just moving on to the inclusive curriculum law, which makes the studies show that when there is inclusive curriculum, that the incidence of bias and the responses of the people, the adults in the situation to handle such incidents is much lower incidence of bias and more apt of the people who are, the teachers, the other school staff to respond and ensure that there's some protection for students. So inclusive curriculum, and this is, in a way, it's rolling out slowly but surely. It really came to be ready to go into effect just at the time the pandemic was happening, and so the whole process got a little bit slowed down. And I will just also say that at the time this law was created, and goes working on it, went back way before 2019. It included persons with disabilities as well as lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender persons, kind of acknowledging that we are in an intersectional world, and that's not going to come back to that in just a moment. So inclusive curriculum, and there is a lot of effort right at the moment to make sure that that educators are ready to include this in their teaching, and also that so much material is available to educators to use. And okay, here's another piece of legislation that is actually very recent, December 2024, a response to places where districts and school libraries, particularly, but also public libraries, where persons are saying such and such a book should be banned. And the predominant books were books that addressed LGBTQ IA plus realities, things that would give people an understanding, and also books addressing persons of color. So needed to have a strong law to ensure that this was not okay in schools and in public libraries. And so it does protect the rights of students, parents, and communities to have access to age appropriate, because schools really work to make sure that things that are there are age appropriate, books and learning materials at schools and public libraries. And we could do a whole session on that, but there's a little bit of resources in what I've sent you. More recently, even, there has been established, well, actually, these both happened in 2024, established a commission in the Department of Education on advancing LGBTQIA youth equity and inclusion in schools. Now, this is really coming into this session about bias and discrimination because, again, when there are elements in the school district, be it the policy, be it the curriculum, that are going to acknowledge the presence of LGBTQ persons, including and maybe especially addressing the needs of transgender and non-binary students, that this is going to really address the question of bias, discrimination, the whole harassment, intimidation, and bullying realities that unfortunately do happen in schools and that we need to have some strong stance against. So this commission has been established in the Department of Education. It just seems like a breath of fresh air in the Department of Education, and it is established by the governor. There is a bill actually that will make this be part of the law so that it won't vanish should any kind of administration change. We want to be sure that it's going to be an ongoing thing. So if you're looking for any action to take, this is a very strong and important thing to ask your senators to be mindful of. And because we are as I said earlier, intersectional. I want to mention some things that are current around the immigration concerns, and we can see so much in news moment by moment by moment how this is such a critical concern. There is also an act titled the Immigrant Trust Act, which will provide protection that is vastly needed in terms of people understanding their rights and people being prepared to support folks with their rights. It's you can see a copy of it in materials that I give. I'll just mention that some of the members of our own queer community will be protected by this bill. Because their status may not be something that, or may be something that puts them very much at risk. Some of our neighbors will be protected, and we do stand together with other marginalized groups to ensure the rights and freedom of all. So I wanted to ensure that that we looked at this particular piece of legislation, which again is alive in the legislature, New Jersey legislature right now, can be acted upon should you be so inclined. Now I'll just talk a little bit about the Bayard Rustin Center for Social Justice. We call ourselves a safe space for LGBTQ plus persons and all marginalized groups. We have the following activities that you're so welcome to be a part of yourself or direct other persons for whom these would be kind of the natural place that they would fit. One is First Friday Welcoming the Community Breakfast, 8 to 10 on every first Friday of the month. We'd love to see any of you there. We've had policymakers and members of the New Jersey administration and others be with us. So it's a nice place to meet and network with people. Queer Youth Brigade, and you'll see at the bottom of this slide who you should call in order to get connected with these folks. The Trans and Non-Binary Justice Collective, Defenders of the Right to Read. That kind of comes out of that piece of legislation I talked about. Racial Justice Task Force. There's so much that we need to be working on. Reproductive justice programs. All of these things are part of the programs of the Bayard Rustin Center. And you can see a little bit more description of them by going to the website that's there, rustincenter.org/powerful programs. And also, if you want to know what's coming up in terms of activities at the center, in addition to that First Friday Welcoming Breakfast and some of the meetings of these other groups, certainly go to the Facebook page, facebook.com/Rustin Center. So I really thank you for being here, all those who are on this program this evening, and just also would say that I'm happy if anyone wants to reach out to me. Again, community programs, professional development for educators, speaking to groups in schools, and Dr. Sarah is kind of the lead person for activities here in Princeton and the New Jersey area, and she's founded that particular email. So thank you, and I would certainly welcome any questions. And I think I can go back to seeing each other. Yes. All right. So I don't know whether there were any questions that anybody had, or if you want to come back to me at any point with things that you need.
There are quite a few questions in the Q&A, so if you can take a moment just to review, see if any of them are relevant to what you have discussed. But in the meantime, I'd like to remind everybody, look at what a powerhouse group of people we have for you, to tell you all these things, to give you all of the information that you need in order to make informed decisions as citizens of New Jersey. And it's also applicable to other states. This is a way that you can find out what offices to contact in your state and where you live. Maybe you don't live in New Jersey. So this is a good way to find out how to investigate to get the services that you need. Okay. So we just want to thank each of our attendees and our panelists for being here. Yes, someone mentioned, what happens if a school district does not follow the laws? What are the consequences?
Well, for one thing, the Attorney General has brought a case against a number of school districts that have not been following that law. And I believe that has not been resolved in the courts at this point. yes. We're in such a critical way. But one of the things that can happen on a wider basis is to go back to that piece of legislation that I mentioned, and for sure ask your senators. Wait a minute, that one isn't there yet. The one that is there is the having the commission passed on for beyond this one governor. But we do expect a law that is going to codify the guidance that's coming out of the thing of the department. And the other thing is to go to the commission. That's one of the things that they are there for. If you're having questions about your school district or any school district that you know not following the law, go to the commission, and actually the executive director there is Kate Okeson, and you can find her contact information on the website. I think I gave you the specific page in the DOE website, but it's real easy to find. It's just the Advisory Commission on LGBTQ things.
Thank you.
Okay, so was there any other one that particularly needs to be addressed?
There was someone who mentioned that we also have the LGBTQIA plus HIV positive long-term care Bill of Rights, and that person put the link to that Bill of Rights into the question and answer section. So for those of you who need that information, it will also be available as part of the information that you receive after the webinar. And thank you once again for your presentation.
Thank you.
And just a reminder to the panelists, if you do see questions during someone else's other presentation that are directed at you, please take a moment to answer them. We may not have a lot of time for questions at the end of this event, so please double check and see. And you may type your answers to them. And we're going to move on to the next presentation in our program. Thank you once again, everyone, for attending. And next up, we have Kai Durant. She is a Community Relations Specialist in the Community Relations Unit, CRU, at New Jersey Division on Civil Rights. At CRU, she works to prevent acts of discrimination and bias-based harassment through education and community engagement. She completed her undergrad at Rutgers University with a focus on sociology and gender studies. Following undergrad, she completed her master's in social work with a concentration on policy from Columbia University. She has experience in community outreach, advocacy, and organizing from her past work at a nonprofit community health center and campaign. Welcome to the panel, Kai.
Thank you for having me. I'm going to quickly share my screen. We can get started. Okay, yes, as Greg said, my name is Kai Durant, she, her pronouns. I'm with the Division on Civil Rights. I'm part of the Community Relations Unit, so we call ourselves as CREW in affection. And I'm excited to talk to you guys about what our agency does. I'll go do a brief overview of what our agency is, the laws that we enforce, and how people can file a complaint with us. So to start, the Division on Civil Rights, we are a state agency. We are under the Office of the Attorney General, which we are under Department of Law and Public Safety. So as you guys heard about earlier from Detective Sam, he talked about bias crimes and what are your rights and laws there and how you can report there. So now I'm focusing on if there's a bias incident that relates to a civil rights violation under our office. And as Carol mentioned about, she talked about the law against discrimination a little bit in her presentation, so I'll expand on that. But I always like to give a little background history of our agency because I'm a little history nerd, but we were created in 1945. So this will be our 80th anniversary of our agency existence. And if you guys know a little bit about your history, the Civil Rights Act at the federal level wasn't passed until 1964. So you can say New Jersey was ahead of the game a little bit when it came to providing protections against discrimination. And A fun fact, New Jersey is the first state to enact a civil rights or anti-discrimination law. So we were a little ahead of the game, and over time, the law has expanded to provide more protections for people across the state. There are 3 laws that we currently enforce. The first one, the law against discrimination, which I'll talk more about in this presentation. We also enforce the Family Leave Act, which is job protected leave to take care of a loved one. This is separate from the federal FMLA Act. So, if you take leave from the federal FMLA Act, that doesn't mean you're taking leave from the New Jersey Family Leave Act. There are separate job protected leaves. And then we also enforce the Fair Chance in Housing Act, which is our newest law. So that's for if people have a past criminal history, it provides a guideline and limitations of how that past criminal history can be considered when they apply for housing. And that is based on the degree of the offense and how long ago it occurred. But today I'm going to focus on the law against discrimination and what that protects. So under the law against discrimination, it's unlawful to subject people to discrimination or bias-based harassment in employment, housing, and places of public accommodation. And there are kind of talking about what we focus on, as I mentioned before, we focus on civil rights violations. So in our investigation, we like to see that we're more of a systemic when it comes to our investigation of bias harassment, because we're not unnecessarily focusing on the individual, we're focusing on more so whether the person in power, so whether the employer, the housing provider, or the place of public accommodation, do they know about this bias-based harassment, and what steps do they take to address it, or do they not take steps to address it? And that's how we kind of come in our investigation to look at it. And it provides protections based on protected categories. And there are about 19 protected categories. I won't go through all of them, but I'll highlight them because they're all important. And we all belong to one of these protected categories, if not more. So that means this law is for all of us and it protects us. So based on protected categories of disability, race, gender, gender identity, national origin, sexual orientation, pregnancy, marital status. And then we have some protected categories that only apply to parts of the law. So on the bottom of the screen, we have, in some cases, so only in housing is familial status and lawful source of income a protected category. And then age and genetic information are only protected categories in employment. But all the other protected categories apply to employment, housing, and places of public accommodation. And to kind of break down of some of our protected categories focusing on the LGBTQ community, when we look at gender identity or gender expression, we're also including whether or not you might identify as transgender, non-binary, or gender non-conforming. And then also when we look at sex discrimination, that also can include being intersex or being perceived. And I think as Carol mentioned in her presentation about actual or perceived, so that means that if you face discrimination or bias-based harassment, even if you don't identify as part of that group, and I think Detective Sam talked about it, it is still a violation of your rights. So let's say someone discriminates against you because they think you belong to this racial group, or because they think this is your sexual orientation. Even if you don't identify as that, it still is a violation of your rights because the person perceived you to belong to that protected group and discriminated against you because of their perception of what they thought you belonged to. So definitely wanted to point that out. So talking about what does that mean in employment? Protections against discrimination applies to all parts of employment. So whether in the recruitment process, the job posting, the interview and hiring decisions, it applies to promotions, terminations, compensation. So we also have the Equal Pay Act under our office. So if you're being paid less wage because of a protected category, that is a violation of your right. All terms and conditions or privileges of employment and membership in a union, that is protected. So if you're facing discrimination, bias-based harassment, or a hostile work environment, and is related to a protected category, that's a violation of your rights, and that's a case where you can file a complaint with our office. going into housing, and discrimination or harassment is illegal when renting or buying a house. In college campuses, this can include residential halls and dorms. So a landlord cannot refuse to lease to you, deny you access to financial services, charge you a higher rent, or offer you different amenities, or refuse to make required repairments to your unit because of protected category. And this also applies to real estate professionals. And also, housing providers must also provide a reasonable accommodation upon your request. And a reasonable accommodation also applies to employment, housing, and place of public accommodation. So let's say if you have a disability and you might need a reasonable accommodation to either access a facility, to access your housing, or to complete your job functions, you have a right to request a reasonable accommodation, and you have to enter an interactive process. And if it is denied a reasonable accommodation, the burden is on whether it's the employer or the housing provider to prove why doing so would be an undue burden or hardship. So that's why the interactive process is important when there is a reasonable accommodation, where you can go back and forth and find out an accommodation that could help you fulfill, whether it's the functions of your job or access to facilities of your housing. And like I said, the key thing is, unless doing so would be an undue burden on the operations. And then the last part that we apply to is in places of public accommodations. So these are places that are generally open to the public. They offer goods or services or facilities for the public to use. So this does include public schools, colleges, and universities, stores and businesses, restaurants, summer camps, medical providers, government offices or agencies. So if you are facing, like I said, discrimination, bias-based harassment in these areas, and like the authority figures, or whether it's the owner of the business, or whether it's the school, if the administration are not taking action to address it or stop it, or even if they do take action, and let's say their action doesn't end it, or is not actions to really prevent it, that is a violation of your rights. And that's a case where you can file a complaint with our office. And I want to mention one case that we investigated to kind of give more example of a real life situation. Our office investigated a case where it was at a restaurant that had a dress code. And the dress code at the restaurant was like a gender binary dress code. So the dress code was like, if you're female, you can wear this, and if you're a male, you can wear that. And there was a patron of the restaurant who identified as non-binary. And the dress code said that male patrons couldn't wear like tank style top, but female patrons can. And this patron identified as non-binary and told the restaurant manager that they identified as non-binary, and the manager was refusing them service, saying you have to abide by the male dress code. Well, that patron ended up filing a complaint with our office, and we investigated the complaint and found that this was a violation of the patron's right under the protected category of gender expression in their gender identity. An outcome of this case was that the restaurant had to change their dress code policy. So it wasn't just a gender binary dress code policy anymore. They had to, I think, change it to include a non-binary dress code as well. So they had to change their policy. They had to go through training all the staff members. And there was also a financial compensation for the patron who this affected them. So that's just kind of one example of a case we were investigating and how we were able to help the person who filed a complaint. The outcome of investigation really depends on the case and kind of some of the examples of what happened in that case. An outcome could be a requirement of a change of policy. It could be a requirement of training for members who might work there, or whether it's a school, employment, or like housing that could be undergoing training, change of policy, and they can also be financial compensation. But that is really dependent on what the case is and what the complaint is. And now I'm going to kind of transition into, okay, how do you file a complaint? So in order for us to take action for any case, or most cases, you have to file a complaint. And we have an online complaint system, which is called bias.njcivilrights.gov. And Detective Sam talked about it and overshowed you what that page looks like when you're there to file a complaint. The top symbols on Detective Sam's presentation were the icons that are if you're going to file a complaint with Division on Civil Rights. And then that one below it was icon if you're going to file a complaint with a bias crime complaint. So like I said, you have to file it online. And I want to say that we do have a statute of limitations of 180 days, which means you have 180 days from the most recent incident to file a complaint with our office for our office to have jurisdiction. If it happened like 200 days ago, unfortunately, we wouldn't have jurisdiction over your incident. We also know that sometimes things are happening over a long period of time. Let's say you're working at your job and you've been facing a hostile work environment or harassment for the past year. You have 180 days from the most recent incident. So let's say there's an incident that happened last week at your job, even though it's been going on for a year, you have 180 days from the incident last week to file a complaint with our office and for our office to have jurisdiction over your situation. I also want to mention that retaliation is prohibited under our law. So you cannot be retaliated against for filing a complaint with our office or trying to exercise your right. So if you do face retaliation for filing a complaint or exercising your rights against the law, if your case is still under investigation, you will just inform your investigator to update your investigation. Let's say our case had closed, and let's say you face retaliation after we had to close our investigation. You can file a new complaint and saying, hey, I face retaliation for exercising my rights. So I think that's important to know as well, because sometimes people, and I feel like oftentimes people might face retaliation, which might bring fear and prevent people from wanting to file a report. And I always encourage people, when in doubt, it's just best to report. Don't let yourself try to determine whether or not it's a violation under the law. Let our investigators determine whether or not. They're the ones who are trained, know the law, and able to investigate and see whether or not it's a violation of our law. So I always encourage people to file a complaint. And then I want to mention, let's say if you do need help filing your complaint, you go on the website and let's say you're confused by the system or process. I gave some important emails and phone numbers where you can contact to get help. So if you need technological support, we have an NJ Bias tech support at njcivilrights.gov email account. We also have a phone number, which is 862-350-5150 to get technological support and filing complaint. If you have general inquiries about the Division of Civil Rights or about the laws or just maybe even how to use it, we can call. We have a hotline, which is 1-833-NJ-DCR for you, and relay service at 711, I believe, or telephone line. They will get back to you in at least 72 hours if you call that number and need help. You can also email at njdcr4u@njcivilrights.gov for general inquiries. And for language interpretations, or if you need help, because you might need like someone interpreter, you can email us at languagehelp@njcivilrights.gov, or you can even call the phone number as well. I also want to mention that if you could also file a report on someone's behalf, so you can be an advocate. And there's a place when you file a complaint where you can indicate that I'm an advocate and I'm creating this report for someone else in case someone might need help filing the complaint or might not feel comfortable doing so themselves. So if people, I know a lot of times might work in advocacy spaces, or if you have a family member or someone you know who maybe wants to make this complaint, but might not feel comfortable doing so, you can be an advocate and file for it on their behalf. And then before I wrap up, I want to mention that we also have a sister unit, which is our education and training unit, and they have free trainings that are for the public that go more in depth into the laws that we enforce and also do a wide range of topics. Their trainings are virtual. They're about 2 to 3 hours long, and they're really engaging. So some of the topics they have trainings on is hair discrimination, discrimination in housing, informing LGBTQIA identities in schools, microaggressions, and responding to them, understanding implicit bias. I highly recommend taking these trainings if you want to dive deeper into the laws that we enforce or even dive deeper into these topics. And then lastly, I ended out that if you want to stay connected with us or get more information, we have our website, which is njcivilrights.gov, which has all the information I went over and in more detail. You can also email us at communityrelations@njcivilrights.gov, and that's how you can get in contact with me or one of my colleagues in the community relations unit. We do have a Facebook and Twitter account at Civil Rights NJ, so you can keep up with maybe some of the events that we do. And we have, like I said, the phone number, which is 1-833-NJD for you, and our bias investigation access system. This is bias.njcivilrights.gov. That will take you directly to the webpage to file a bias complaint with our office. And then very lastly, I just always have to say this, but I want to thank you for having me. And I have to please advise that I do not provide legal counsel or legal advice, and I cannot comment on any ongoing investigations or litigations. But thank you for having me, and I'll throw it back to you, Greg. Let me stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Kai. That was very informative. And just as a side note, if anyone is interested in taking any of those courses that she mentioned online, they are excellent. You will get top-notch information from them. And please make yourself available because they are free, correct? Yes.
Yes, they are.
So make sure you reach out to the contact information that she just presented, and that will all be included in the resources that you receive after the webinar. I would like to advise anyone that has questions tonight and we don't answer your question, you're receiving information, contact information from our guests, and I invite you to contact them at the information they give you to ask your question at that time if you don't get an answer for it tonight. Now, moving on, we are going to have Danielle King. She is a dedicated advocate for the underserved communities with over 15 years of experience in health education and LGBTQ plus advocacy. A U.S. Marine Corps veteran, she pursued a master's in public health from Rutgers University, driven by her personal experiences in the LGBTQ plus healthcare system. At Robert Wood Johnson Barnabas Health, she played a key role in expanding LGBTQ plus patient services, securing funding for critical programs, and educating healthcare professionals across New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Her efforts have supported thousands of patients with transportation, housing, healthcare access, and PrEP services. Passionate about health equity, she finds joy in witnessing patients transform into their authentic selves. Welcome to the panel, Danielle.
Hello, thank you for having me, and thank you for your time in putting this together. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so again, my name is Danielle King. My pronouns are she, they. I'm the regional manager for the Babs Silverstein Proud Center and the Gender Center of New Jersey. So I'm going to be talking a little bit, very briefly, about some laws, some policies, and then I'm going to be telling you about what we do at the Proud Center. So the Human Rights Campaign had declared a state of emergency back in 2023. There have been 84 anti-LGBTQ bills signed into law. 26 states have banned gender-affirming healthcare, the medical treatment for gender dysphoria, and 30 states have restricted access to gender-affirming care. 120 anti-LGBTQ bills have been introduced into legislature across the United States for this legislative year alone. We are what is this, the 27th, 28th? Yes, the 28th. So we are going to be up against something extremely fierce this year, as we all know. A lot of those bills are education and health related. in 2022 and 2023, I'm sorry, my daughter just walked in. Sorry, one second. Abby, I am so sorry. Just give me 1 second.
And I just would like to take this moment to let everyone know if you are someone who has a difficulty reading, are disabled, a neurodiverse person, elderly, or speaks a different language, or has difficulty with processing information, please let the organizations that you're requesting help from know about it so that they can better serve you. As you have heard tonight, some of these organizations have mentioned those kinds of resources that are available to persons, but I'm sure all of them have a variation on that. So please, when you contact them, if you need accommodations, please let them know. I also wanted to take a moment to emphasize the importance of voting, of being registered to vote, making sure that your friends and family and network of friends and family and colleagues are all registered to vote in this state. We have the New Jersey gubernatorial election coming up. And as Carol mentioned in her presentation, we have bills that need to be voted on. So the information about how to contact your senators and your elected officials and how to register to vote and where to register to vote will also be included in the resources that you will receive after the event. Okay, looks like she may be back. Okay, you're muted, Danielle.
Sorry about that. My daughter, it is bedtime and she is just not having it. Okay, so 283 bills were related to education. Okay. April 4th, 2023, Governor Murphy had signed Executive Order 326, which grants protection to anyone providing or receiving gender-affirming care and prohibits health insurers from denying or limiting coverage for services, including gender-affirming care, due to a person's gender identity or expression. Now, we think that we're safe in New Jersey. I wanted to put this up here because we think that we're safe in New Jersey, but we're really not. So what we're seeing is companies who know better, or who are not know better, but they're purposely against our community, are buying their health insurance policies in outer state. So they're buying them in the Tennessee, Ohio, South Carolina, the different areas. And the issue is that when our patient lives here in New Jersey and they're getting labs or they come to us for an appointment, all of their coverage is denied for TransCare. So I'm seeing bills of $4,000, $5,000, and I'm like, what is going on here? Come to find out, I look at the back of their insurance card to see where it's located, and it's in one of those states. So it is an extreme loophole that is causing a lot of issues for New Jerseyans. So the Babs Silberstein Proud Center, that is a good portion of our team in this picture. We're located in Somerville at RWJ. Our mission is to create a safe haven for the LGBTQ community, or our passion and skilled providers offer a specialized care and culturally competent, judgment-free setting. So we say that we always have 3 different pillars, and it's bridging the gap to healthcare, addressing social determinants of health, and educating and serving the community. The Babs Silberstein Proud Center, we offer primary care services, gender-affirming treatment and monitoring, STI, STD treatment, HIV prevention, PrEP or PEP. We have behavioral health. We have 2 different LGBTQ-focused therapists on staff. We have gender-affirming surgery patient navigation as well. We are one of, I think, 10 or less than 10 on the entire East Coast that offer bottom surgery at our hospital. So we do round on those patients while they're here for their 8-day stay. We also do have support groups, referrals, and we also have grant funding. So our grants include HIV at-home test. We also have a grant that covers labs, appointments, therapist coverage, And for that grant, it is for transgender individuals. We have a grant for food insecurities, transportation, bra fitting, breast prosthetics and binding, temporary housing for 2 weeks, and we also support our support groups through our grants. And just to backtrack on transportation, we Uber patients to and from their appointments, and that can be any patient, any of our patients, and anywhere in the state, because we know that we are one of the few that offer this service. We also do have a MARTI system for people who need transportation. Translation. They offer 250 plus languages, including American Sign Language. We also have various signage throughout the hospital that are in various languages. And to go back to the MARTI, it connects you with an on-site person. So it's an actual person like we are talking right now and our provider. It's in real time. We are wheelchair accessible as well. And then I'm going to talk about the Proud Gender Center, which is in New Brunswick. It's basically like a navigation hub that sends you out to different providers within Rutgers Health and RWJ in New Brunswick. So we have primary care providers, we have surgeons, top surgery, facial feminization. We also have an LGBT transgender focus vocal trainer who's a speech pathologist. We do GYN, educational trainings, and support groups. We have 4 support groups: Proudly Me, which is for the transgender community; Orgulloso for the Latinx community; Proud Transitions, which is for family support group, and our pre and post-op. We do host events for the community as well. This year we had a coat drive. We gave out 220 coats to the LGBTQ community. We have a Friendsgiving. We participate in Trans Day of Remembrance and Trans Day of Visibility. And we also do a flag raising, which is highly attended. And we also have the Proud Center at CMC. They are one of our newer facilities, so they are still in the growing process. But they offer primary care services, and we're trying to move to them having HRT in the future. We're working with their team to provide that. Sorry, it's been a long day. And then at RWJ, we also do offer a name change clinic, which is based on a pay scale. And this is really awesome because right now we're really pushing for our community to go ahead and get this done. We had an amazing amount of patients and people from the community utilize this service right before Trump came into office, and they're still utilizing it now. So we're really, really, really pushing this. So if you have anybody who's interested, you can contact us. And I know everyone is interested in knowing where will the Proud Center be, as everything is happening with today's political climate. So I just wanted to let y'all know that the Proud Center is not state or federally funded. Our office is listed as a primary care provider or family medicine, so we're not listed as LGBTQ services. We do these things on purpose, even though that is what we offer and that is our focus group. We do these things on purpose for situations like we're about to see. All of our grants at Proud are private and not state or federally funded. Once again, that was highly intentional because our grants and funding cannot be pulled by any entity except our private funders. So the grant funding to our patients at risk, who are at risk of losing their insurance, will still remain accessible. Those were those grants that I had mentioned before. So if anything comes down and our patients are said, oh, if you have Medicaid and Medicare, we're not covering trans care, that's great. We still are. We still have the funding. We will still provide it. We're still here. And RWJ, our system fully backs us, and we are working at full capacity, and we're absolutely not going anywhere anytime soon. So just to let you know, right now we see when I first started here 6 years ago, we were at maybe about 50 patients, and we are now at about 3,600. So we have a very wide variety of patients. We love what we do. We're here for if y'all need us in any way, and this is our contact information. So sorry about my daughter coming in. She's
No worries, no
exhausted.
worries, no worries. It's all good. And we really appreciate you sharing. And I know based on information you share with me that today was probably one of the longest days you had in a while. But
Yes, with all the funding stuff that got cut, we work very closely with Hyacinth and other people throughout the state. So, we're just trying to figure out how we can help and how we could be of assistance. So it's been a long day.
we really and truly appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And we have next Jill Schlossberg has been in the field of mental health and addiction for over 17 years. She is licensed as a professional counselor and clinical drug and alcohol counselor. Jill currently works at the Mental Health Association in New Jersey as a member of the New Jersey Connect for Recovery Management Team and Director of Services for Hudson and Union County. She also has a private practice in Hudson County, New Jersey. Welcome to our panel, Jill.
Thank you so much. I should say that my presentation is very short. So if I missed anything, please feel free to ask any questions that you might have. So I'm going to share my slides. As Greg said, I am with the Mental Health Association in New Jersey. I have been with the mental health, with MHA&J for almost going on 4 years, and I'm the director of Hudson and Union County. MHA, first of all, has been around for a very long time. We've been around for about 80 years, and our mission in New Jersey is a statewide nonprofit organization that strives for people to achieve victory over mental illness and substance use disorder through advocacy, education, training, and services. And we understand that all discrimination undermines mental health. So our main focus is really to help people work on their wellness through so many different models. So that's why I said I tried to condense this in as much as I can, but we do so much great programming. We have county-based programming in Hudson, in Union, in Ocean, in Atlanta County. Then we have statewide programs. So I tried to give you guys as much good information that I could and jam-packed it into about 10 minutes of information. So like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free. And I'm sure that there is something that I forgot, and I will probably remember once the presentation is over. So when we think about transition, when we think about, climates changing and things like that, it brings up a lot of anxiety and fear for all of us. So what I like to think, not only as a peer, but I also like to think as a clinician, is how can we reduce the anxiety and fear that we may be experiencing at this time? I think about utilizing certain tools. So if we look at calming self-talk, so I'm not my anxiety, trying to be mindful, stay in the moment, or the tool that I love the most because it can be done pretty much anywhere is grounding. So that's 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And it's literally just that simple. You can do it if you're laying down. You could do it if you're sitting down. You could do it if you're out with a bunch of friends. So it's kind of a one size fits all tool when you might be experiencing some anxiety. So just a little bit of information. So I'm going to discuss our Union County programs, as I am the director over them, some of our statewide programs and trainings, as well as our call lines. So in Union County, I oversee our peer outreach support team. So what we do there is we support those looking for non-clinical peer-based mental health support. So we utilize peer specialists. So what the peer recovery method is, it's really utilizing people who have their own lived experience with either mental health or substance use, and how they can share their strength and hope and give it back to other people. So although I am a clinician by trade, I am also a peer. So when I am wearing my peer hat, I get the opportunity to tell people about my story and, discuss my mental health and how, my journey's been working on my own recovery. I can't say enough good things about peer recovery specialists, peers in the workplace. They really bridge the gap between, the clinical work and the person who's coming in for services. We also have a recovery peer outreach support team. This program supports those looking for recovery from a substance use disorder and or mental health. So this would be for someone who has what we call a co-occurring disorder. We have our intensive family support services. This program provides family members tools to when their loved ones might be struggling with a mental health issue. So that program provides advocacy, provides support for the family while the person who's experiencing the mental health issue could potentially be enrolled in post services or our post services. And then we have Esperanza, which is our community wellness center. So this program offers community programming for the Hispanic Latinx population in the county. We also offer English services as well, but we are very much trying to promote the wellness center for that population. See what is going on with my slides. Okay. And I missed one. Sorry for that. So I'm going to just discuss a few of our statewide trainings and programs just because, like I said, I could probably spend an hour talking about the amazing work that MHA does. And I wanted to give you guys just a little snippet. So you'd have to go on the website and check out all the wonderful things that we do. So there was a method to my madness. So we provide statewide trainings, like I said. Two of the big ones I would say that we provide are mental health first aid and our question, persuade, refer. So mental health first aid is an international education program proven to be effective in teaching adults how to recognize and respond to signs and symptoms of mental health and substance use challenges. And this is really, again, an important training because it could let a family member know, it could let a friend know, it could let an educator know how to recognize and, again, respond to signs and symptoms of someone having a mental health challenge. And then we have our QPR, which is our question, persuade, refer. This training provides the necessary tools to teach anyone the warning signs of a suicidal crisis and equip them with the tools to respond. In taking this training, you learn the proper language to utilize when someone might be experiencing a suicidal crisis. And that's really important. Like when I took the training, I learned that if you're going to, you need to be very much upfront when you're asking a person whether or not they're looking to take their life, and then knowing how to respond should they answer that yes to that question. And then one of our statewide programs that was actually that came out of COVID was our United by Wellness, or UBW, which is a fully virtual wellness center providing those needing support with over 50 groups per week based on their needs and engagement, including our Lambda Rising, which is our LGBTQIA+ support group, offering a safe space for those who may be struggling. But we provide so many different groups. We have social groups. We have groups based on specific topics. If a person is dealing with depression, we have a depression support group. If a person just wants to come and engage in a social hour, we have our Music to My Ears group, where you can just listen to music with people who might be struggling or might just want to get together with some people that they know who are going through the same things that they're going through. We've really built a sense of community, and I would say this is one of the best things that, that came out of COVID with MHA&J, because we've been able to help people not only countywide, but statewide, and not even statewide. We've seen people as far away as Europe who come to our groups just looking for support. And then if you're not sure where to go with MHA&J, you can give us a call. So we have our 4 Connect lines, our NJ Connect for Recovery, which I help with just a little bit, we provide support for family members whose loved ones are struggling with substance misuse. And then our CARES line provides free confidential support and connections to resources that someone facing a mental health issue might need, including treatment. So I would say if someone really needs help, but they're not sure to go, our CARES line is would be the first place I would direct them to. And then we have our peer recovery warm line, which is staffed with peers with their own lived experience who provide support to those struggling. And then 988. So the line is staffed with crisis counselors providing support and helping those who are experiencing mental health distress, including a mental health or substance use crisis. And if you have any questions, please let me know. If you'd like to see any more of our services, you can check out our website, which is www.mhanj.org. You can contact me. That is my work number, as well as my email address. Thank you so much for your time. I do apologize if it was very short. I tried to condense as much as I could with as little time as I thought I might have. So thank you again for having me.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, because I also was someone who took advantage of your services during COVID. My job did not close, so I discovered that you had the virtual services, the music group, there was an LGBT group as well. And every week I faithfully attended that, as well as the music group. And I found it so wonderful to be able to suggest a song and have them play it. And I've grown my music library as a result.
I'm so glad you enjoyed it.
So I really do appreciate it. It was a source of comfort to me, and it really was a good thing. So keep up the great work.
Thank you.
And we have next on our program the Reverend Dr. Neil G. Thomas. He is the senior pastor of Cathedral of Hope of Dallas, Texas, called and elected by the 4,500 member congregation in 2015. Prior to his arrival at Cathedral of Hope, Dr. Thomas served as senior pastor of two Metropolitan Community Churches, MCC, an international movement of churches reaching in and beyond the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, and intersex community. As a native of Bournemouth, England, Dr. Thomas was born into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. His family left the Mormon Church in his early years. A sought-after speaker and published author, Dr. Thomas contributes to local, national, and international conversations around the intersectionality of faith, color, gender identity, and sexual orientation. Welcome to the panel, Reverend Neil.
Thank you so much. And I will not need to share a screen this evening. I'm grateful just to be here and to hear of the amazing things that are happening in your community. As you know, I'm in Dallas, Texas, and the landscape is a little different here than it is there. But I have the great honor of serving as the senior minister of Cathedral of Hope, which is a United Church of Christ. So we share something in common with your good selves. And we have been a congregation now for 55 years, actually, this year. And so when this congregation was founded in 1970, the landscape for LGBT people specifically was very different than it is today. It was founded by a group of 12 folks who came together in a living room here in Dallas and decided that they were done with the brand of Christianity that was being propagated that God did not like, in fact, hated LGBT people, or specifically in those days referred to ourselves as the gay community or the lesbian and gay community. And decided that it was time for them to reject a toxic theology and to begin to proclaim God's radical, inclusive love. The Cathedral began as a Metropolitan Community Church and later transferred its denominational allegiance to the United Church of Christ for many reasons, but I believe one of those reasons was that this was a radical message that wasn't just needed for the LGBT community, but was needed for many who had experienced religious trauma, who had experienced religious abuse. And as we're seeing in our own culture, we are discovering and realizing that religious abuse and toxic theology and religious trauma spans many, many communities. And grateful to the United Church of Christ that ever since 1972, when it first ordained an openly gay man, has been on this path that no matter where you are on life's journey, you are welcome here, and has openly ordained LGBT people now into its denomination for several decades. I say all that because even though the Cathedral of Hope is a 4,500 member congregation, averaging about 1,000 in worship on Sunday morning, about 80% continue to be predominantly identifying somewhere on that alphabet soup, LGBTQ, TS, I should say, SGL, QIA. We keep expanding our alphabet. And we're realizing that there is something about the experience of LGBT people and the faithfulness of LGBT people that continues to draw people back to the sense of higher power, of spirituality, of the Christian way, and leads as an example to other marginalized communities in their struggle to find their identity beyond orthodoxy, beyond conservative evangelical Christianity. And I think there is something, as we kind of, you talked about this seminar a little while ago, not perhaps knowing where we would be today. And so I hear all of those amazing things that are happening in New Jersey, and we know that all of those things are under scrutiny and under the possibility of dismantling. Only 6 days into a new presidency, and already DEI completely abolished within the federal system, the pressure put on corporations to close their DEI programming. And we see the list of those companies that have already dismantled them, some of the very large companies. And this sense also of others who are being resistant. And I think that there is, as I listen to the panel, as I listen to the great work that's happening, and as I also acknowledge and see the dismantling of so much that we've taken for granted, even marriage equality, Idaho already petitioning the Supreme Court to revisit marriage equality and return it to the states. That there is a great deal of fear, a great deal of anxiety in many communities. And here in Dallas just today, watching ICE agents randomly stopping cars in predominantly Hispanic communities to check their documents and the mass deportations that we are already witnessing. So the level of anxiety that is being generated in our communities and in our world right now is off the charts. Grateful for the immense services of mental health, much of which will also be dismantled as we continue down this path. And so I want to offer, if I may, some of the ways in which the LGBT community specifically can offer something to the greater world, and those of us who claim to be people of faith can offer to the world. And that really is this joy of resilience and the joy of resistance. I've been ordained for, far more years than I ever want to acknowledge. I was ordained when I was 23. I'm now 58, 59 in April. And so I lived through the AIDS pandemic and through the mass pandemic that I say was the second pandemic of the first pandemic of the 21st century, COVID being the second. But I acknowledged and saw and continue to see the tremendous amount of resilience and joy that LGBT people bring to this work. And as such, realizing that even in the face of persecution, even in the face of bias, even in the face of discrimination, this resilience that comes from a sense of community, a sense of identity, can serve us well as we move into the next 4 years. And want to really strongly encourage those who are on the front line, the panelists that we've already heard from, those that are on this call and who will watch it later, I would use in my own faith language from the book of Psalms, my soul dwells in the darkness of the night, but my joy comes in the morning, that this too shall pass. And for those of us who have some kind of faith or some kind of resilience, to understand that this resistance that we're being encouraged to do right at this very moment is imperative to the future of what it means to be a part of the United States of America, and to really hold on to one another, to community, because the temptation is to bury our heads. The temptation is to go within. The temptation is to separate ourselves out from the world. But I believe that is a strategy that the religious right, which I would rather call the religious wrong, but that the religious right and the strategy of power wants us to do. And that if we can take some lessons from those who were in the front lines of the AIDS pandemic, and to see how change happened, I would say that there has not been one social change, lasting social change in the United States that has not been pioneered by people of faith. And I see that dramatically in the civil rights movement, in the women's rights movement, in the LGBT community, that it was only when our churches and places of worship began to understand that they were not of the world, that they were to change the world, they were to be countercultural, that we began to see significant change in the way, and we have now, unfortunately, been co-opted by an evangelical conservative right wing that has colluded with culture. And it really is incumbent on those of us who stand on the margins. And we're a much, much bigger group now. We know there's a dominant voice out there, but we have the ability, I believe, if we can stand strong, if we can stand in our resilience, if we can continue to push back. And I will not use the word fight back, because that's not what we do, but to push back, to hold a mirror to society, to be brave, like Bishop Marianne in the Washington Cathedral, who said nothing short of what the Christian gospel asks us to do, and I would say that all faiths invite us to do, is to love justice, to do mercy. That if we can really coalesce around this sense of resilience, or this sense of joy, this sense of knowing that our work makes a difference, that it's impacting people's lives, that we will get through this next 4 years. And at the same time, to understand that we are under attack, and that we need to be there for one another, to hold on to the programs that we can do, and to continue to support and to fund these programs, because the likelihood is that federal funding is going to be stripped from many of these programs. Just hearing today that the grant funding for HIV meds to other nations, if that is not a temporary pause, is literally going to wipe out folks who rely on HIV medications from the United States for their very existence. And believe me, it will not stop there. There is threats to funding for PrEP, for PEP, for combination therapies for people living with HIV. Transgender people are under attack. The two sexes now being mandated by the government. All of this is just layered upon folks who are already in a disenfranchised way. So what gets me up in the morning? It's things like this, where we can have conversation with one another, find the resources, and then continue on with the struggle that we see before us. But ultimately, I have to believe, just as the psalmist records for us, that though we walk through the darkness of our souls, the joy will come in the morning. And that has been proven over and over again. And we will prevail during these times. As I say, I didn't bring a presentation because I think that my word was to bring a sense of joy in the midst of all this. Joy is resilience. Joy is a gift, which is not based on our circumstances, and a joy of knowing that we're in this together, and that we must continue to be in this together. And I'll just say one final thing to Danielle. I also have a 10-year-old. I'm solo parenting tonight, and she came in right in the middle and said, "I'm hungry, Dada." And so I had to rush out and get her some food before getting her into a bath and into a bed. That is the joy that nobody can take away from us. And I'll pause there and just say thank you again for just the true honor. If you want to get a hold of me, I'm at Cathedral of Hope in Dallas, cathedralofhope.com. You can watch our worship services online. We broadcast like most people do now. And we have a myriad of programs that serve people, not just locally, but internationally, through our Believe Out Loud programs. So I'll leave it there and just let people explore our website and to be in touch. But our joy will always come in the morning.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. And something that I would like to say as a way of two things, actually. One, take advantage of all of the wonderful resources that your state has to offer you. You have had a panel that has laid a banquet, a literal banquet before you of so many services and things that you have at the tips of your fingers to help you. And so all it takes is a phone call, all it takes is an email, all it takes is to reach out, because there are people in this state who believe in community and believe in resources and believe in trying to help you get the services that you need, you know, whether they're by law or whether they're mental health services or what have you. And this webinar was just the tip of the iceberg. There are plenty of other services out there that I could not invite because we just wouldn't have time to highlight them all. So hopefully this will encourage you and inspire you on your journey. Another thing I'd like to say is, as you mentioned just now, Reverend Neil, about community, the importance of the LGBT community. If you look back at the history of our community, that is what has always brought us through. It's always been standing together and doing the work and having the joy. And something that my husband and I do every weekend on Saturday morning is there is a free Zoom that comes on every Saturday called Jolts of Joy. And we participate in that because the leader of that group, Gail Ann Bruin, she calls herself the Joyologist, and she gives practical and easy to use techniques on how to promote joyful wellness within yourself. And we're not talking about over the world joy. We're talking about joy in small increments that can help you through your life. And so that information will also be included in our packets that we're going to email you. Just a few final words because of the lateness of the hour. I want to let you know that all of your questions and all of your comments from the Q&A will be forwarded to all of the panelists, so they can also answer those questions by providing any additional resources that they have to continue on that journey for your health and wellness. I have a couple more slides I want to share, and then we're going to close. This free webinar was sponsored by Christ Church of Summit, New Jersey, which relies on donations. And if you enjoyed this excellent and informative program, you can find a link where you may make a donation on the Christ Church website at www.christchurchsummit.org, and you click on the donation button, and any gift of any size would be very much and gratefully appreciated. I would like to thank you in advance for your kind and generous support. Once again, the Love and Faith Alliance has an email list. That's the email list that sent you the link to this presentation. If you are interested in more presentations like this and upcoming events and meetings, please send an email to lafa@christchurchsummit.org, and you will receive the notification. And some of the comments coming in, just so you know, thank you all so much. Thank you for this excellent and empowering program. Knowledge of resources is power. Thank you all so much for coming. Be safe and have a good night. Thank you.